So, in the face of the great welter of defections from the opposition to the ruling party and what appears to be the inexorable march of President Tinubu towards a second term, how can the opposition stop him in his tracks? Well, according to opposition politician Deli Momodu, the straightforward strategic logic that would tilt the political balance against Mr. Tinubu would be for the opposition to zone the presidency to the Muslim north and the vice presidency to the Christian south. This, he says, would be the bridgehead that would not only knock down the Tinubu Muslim ticket, but would unlock a mass of votes in both the north and the south and ensure victory for the opposition in 2027. According to him, that is the only scaffolding on which the opposition must hang its electoral fortunes in 2027 and the way that it can lock down the North completely against President Tinubu. So whatever happened to that time-honored principle of rotational presidency? How much would zoning the presidency to the North in the ADC coalition, for instance, undermine the principle of fairness and equity and send a message that southern presidencies are dispensable? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from Lagos by the former presidential candidate and publisher of Ovation magazine, Deli Momodu. Momodu, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Always nice to see you and to get the benefit of your analysis. First of all, before we get to the meat and potatoes of this interview, I wonder how you reacted to the news that your friend and fellow opposition politician and fellow media entrepreneur Ben Murray Bruce has decided to defect from the PDP to the ruling APC party and to, in effect, pitch his political tent with President Tinubu. I saw a note you wrote somewhere where you said you watched it in utter disbelief.
Well, I watched it in utter disbelief because I assumed that he worked with us with the Atiku campaign during the last campaign. That was my belief. So maybe my judgment was wrong. I mean, he attended many of our strategic meetings and all that. But I give him the right, enshrined in the Constitution of Nigeria, about freedom of association, freedom of movement. So I don't have any problems with it. Nothing can ever shock me again about politicians. Some people have genuine reasons to move from one party to another, especially if you have some aspirations which you believe will be better served in the next party. But for me, I've seen it all before. In 1993, a few days after General Sani Abacha took power, I think that would have been about November 17th, 1993, there was a meeting a few days after in Chief M.K. Abiola's house. And I thank God for my knowledge of Nigerian history. That night, there was a gathering of who is the SDP, the party that won the presidential election fair and square. That night, we saw Nigerian politicians at play, one after the other, be it Alhaji Abubakar Rimi of blessed memory, and some of them, especially Baba Gana Kingibe, who was the running mate to Chief Abiola, they all defected to Abacha's camp. Though early in the morning, I had met with Chief MKO Abiola, and he had mentioned to me that Baba was leaving, but I didn't believe it, that this is Baba Gana Kingibe. But by evening, it was clear that Chief Abiola was on his own. It was a case of everyone for himself, God for us all. Since then, I've learned to take every shock or shocker from politicians with uncommon equanimity. So, seeing my friend and brother, a very brilliant, a great orator, Demure Bruce just walk saunter away so calmly into APC. I wasn't surprised. That is where the road is very smooth at the moment. Those of us in opposition are regarded as very stupid and not smart enough to join the rat race. I listened to a couple of governors who decamped in the last couple of days and weeks. Oh, we want to connect to the center. To the center of what? When did politics become the national grid that people have to connect to as if they need electricity urgently? So it's unfortunate, but I know that anyone who witnessed the Abacha era will not be surprised, and we shall see how it will all end.
Indeed, but just very, very briefly, so we can move on, is it your sense that the APC is cajoling and coercing opposition politicians to switch allegiance as the ruling party continues to ride high on these defections?
Yeah, what you have asked is a rhetorical question. You've already answered the question. It's a combination of cajoling, of coercing, of mesmerizing, and I'm beginning to feel that Nigerians have been jazzed by some politicians because the behavior and misdemeanor do not appear normal to me. It's abnormal. People who have no business whatsoever. Imagine a second-term governor. Where are you running to? What are you running away from? You know? So, for me, it's a combination of so many things. But I believe, one, there are those who want more jollification. So those ones will go to where the action is. You know, the federal government of Nigeria is probably more powerful than the American president or the American government. President Tinubu is definitely one of the most powerful democratically elected presidents in the history of Nigeria. And I predicted it on a different platform in 2022 that this was going to happen. And that night, a lot of people fought with me that what do I mean that we're dealing with potential dictatorship. But it's clear that someone somewhere does not even want any competition in 2027. So they will do everything possible to make sure that there are no stronger candidates. And unfortunately, the masses in Nigeria are also hoodwinked very easily. They believe that, oh, you are just crying wolf where there is none. And they are telling me, oh, this one is a bad candidate. That the candidate that can take on this assignment is the one that they are trying to destroy, and the poor people are falling for it. That's why I said we have been jazzed. It's obvious. Once you see the ruling party attacking some particular candidates, and in this case, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar and my good friend, the former governor and former presidential candidate, Peter Obi, the way they are being attacked, disparaged on a daily basis, you will know that between those two, there is something that the government does not want.
Well, let me pick you up on that, because you recently asked Peter Obi and other presidential aspirants to play what you called the ethnic religious card in order to defeat President Tinubu in 2027. Well, what do you mean by that?
Oh, it's obvious that the ruling government has already turned this into an ethnic battle, and it's going to be a battle of North versus South. That is why when you saw PDP apparatchiks, APC apparatchiks, all of them struggling to insist that a candidate must come from the South, they know that President Tinubu has already locked down the South. And nobody, not Peter Obi, not Goodluck Jonathan, will be able to catch up with him where he is right now. To start with, he has a bottomless pit of resources to pour into this next election. So he has locked down the South. If Peter Obi decides to go alone now, I don't know from which party he can do that. He is no longer in Labour Party. And President Jonathan, since he left power, I'm not aware that he has fraternized with any of the parties. I'm not aware that he has built new structures and he has built upon old structures. So elections are run based on structures. I always say that. Some people will say, no, we don't need structures. But you need structures. You need agents nationwide to protect your vote. Even if you are the most popular politician, for as long as you are not able to protect your votes, you will lose a lot. So that is why I have said they must play the ethnic card using the Isaac Newton's law of motion. Actions and reactions are always equal and opposite. The opposite for Tinubu's total lockdown of the southern regions will be for the north to retaliate from the north. So then, in terms of religion, President Tinubu is already locked in. It's a marriage by force between him and his vice president, Kashim Shettima. There is no way he can offload him at this stage without causing monumental crisis. I know he will be tempted to say he wants to go into the north central or what we call the middle belt to go and pick a new vice presidential candidate. I believe at this stage that will cause even more chaos than what they are trying to run away from. So the religious card is that whoever the northern candidate is will be a Muslim, and the southern vice presidential candidate will be, the northern candidate will be a Muslim, and the southern will be a Christian. So that way you will have a decent balance. There will be no controversy between the religions that, oh, we don't want a Muslim ticket. I know that they got away with it the last time, but it will be smoother for a northern candidate than for a southern presidential candidate.
So in effect, Basharu, you're saying that the 2027 presidential election has become an ethnic contest, and the only way for the opposition to stand a chance is to command votes from the opposite direction, so that the race for the ticket is essentially between the likes of Atiku, Kwankwaso, Tambuwal, El Rufai, and even, as you suggested, Emir Sanusi Lamido, Sanusi, if he decides to step into politics. But I mean, coming from a southerner like yourself, some may think that that sounds almost diabolical at a time when the South has only served 4 years of its 8-year term at the presidency.
There is nothing diabolical about my suggestion. I know you are a very knowledgeable journalist. Please, do you want ethnic scammers? I call them scammers. Hagiographers who are just being pretentious, okay, and diabolical, to borrow your own word. When was it written and where was it written in the Constitution of Nigeria that the North must do 8 years and the South must do 8 years thereafter? That's the first question. The second question is that, please, when did this, your 8-year rotation, practiced ever in Nigeria. Tell me one example. President Obasanjo did 8 years, followed by President Yaradua, who died in power. Did any of these modern-day hagiographers, did they ever fight for the North to take over the remaining years of Yaradua? Then, after President Jonathan completed the tenure of the Yaradua-Jonathan government, so did President Jonathan not contest on his own for another 4 years, doing a total of 5 years? After 5 years, did he not contest again for a possible and likely 4 years, which would have made 9 years in total? I'm not even going to argue whether it is constitutional or not, but it would have had 9 years. And when you add that 9 years to President Obasanjo's 8 years, that would have given you 17 years in total. So please tell me what happened.
What this will do to the Nigerian political landscape if the presidency is zoned to the north in 2027 in the ADC, because I think he is now a member of the ADC. I mean, the question, of course, doesn't that, although he's making an argument about that principle, but I think most people in Nigeria, and a lot of politicians, including himself at the outset, because, I mean, he was part of the PDP and that was a principle that was applied in the PDP as well as in the APC. And the question is, doesn't that undermine the principle of fairness and equity, given that the South has not yet completed its 8-year cycle, and truncating it would send a message that Southern presidencies are dispensable, in addition, of course, to the possibility that it might create instability and undermine national cohesion. The other critical question that must not be overlooked, because, I mean, he's making the point that the North needs to coalesce around a northern candidate in order to pose a big challenge to President Tinubu, who, according to him, has locked down the South. But, I mean, in assessing voting numbers in this country, I wonder if it is his contention that only a northern candidate will be able to draw out northern votes on a scale that might actually threaten victory for President Tinubu and the APC. I mean, is it fair to say that there are many people in the North who will only vote for a northern candidate? I mean, that doesn't seem to be fair in a country where people have different political persuasions. I mean, it doesn't seem to be a very accurate assessment. And of course, the other thing that is being overlooked is the fact that, well, certainly he appears to be overlooking, is the fact that he's making the assumption that President Tinubu does not have much of big support in the North. And that is not the case, because the APC, which is President Tinubu's party, does have considerable support in the North, with a preponderant number of governors already locked down there.
I heard you very clearly, and trust me, for the first time, I disagree with you vehemently.
Sure.
Because what you were preaching, I heard everything you were saying, I don't know why you couldn't see or hear me, is totally wrong. One, there is nothing in the Constitution of Nigeria that stipulates that it must be 8 years in the North and 8 years in the South. Please, I am wrong. Please bring it out. Number two, there has never been a time that someone spent 8 years, a southerner spent 8 years, and it was followed by 8 years in the North. Yaradua died in power after 3 years, and those who took over from him for the next 5 years, the only man was a southerner and a John man from Bayelsa, President Goodluck Jonathan. Buhari has been the only exception with 8 years in power. And Jonathan's 5 years, he was still allowed to contest, which would have made his tenure a total of 9 years. So I am insisting, and if you look at it, you had Obasanjo 8 years, you had Yara years, you had Goodluck Jonathan making it a total of 9 years. Nobody ever protested at that time to say they cannot contest from the South. Even while Yaradua and co were there, General Momodu Buhari kept contesting. They called him a serial contestant. He was able to contest because there was no such principle of rotation. It is only when some clever by art that they decided that yes, it must be a rotation, and they will use you. They will say in principle.
Basharu is what he's saying is really interesting, and I think worth discussing. But unfortunately, the technology has got the better of us, and I think we have to move on from here. Basharu Dele Momodu is a former presidential candidate and publisher of Ovation magazine. He was talking to me on the line there from Lagos.